Listener. Today we're taking a deep dive into The Art of Nillness by Anil Kanthi. This isn't just another self-help book. It's presented as a pretty radical proposal, really, for living with profound depth and clarity. It even promises a shortcut to being truly well-informed about yourself and, the world around you. We're going to be exploring a really fundamental shift in perspective here, moving us away from the mind's endless illusions and closer to simply being in reality. And the author suggests something quite, profound right off the bat, that suffering, although we don't want it, is actually a prerequisite for experiencing life deeply, in its most authentic form.
Yeah, it's fascinating how Anil Kanthi immediately challenges our typical understanding. He makes a really bold statement that just piling up more knowledge doesn't actually lead to enlightenment. It's more about our collective progress as a species, he says. Which leads us to a really important question. If intellectual understanding isn't the path to truth, then what is?
Exactly. And the book lays out this powerful framework. It guides us from what he calls the current human condition, all the way to the subtle art of nillness, a concept he asserts holds, truly transformative capabilities. Our mission today: let's unpack these ideas, distill the core lessons, and maybe explore how they might just transform your everyday life, the mind's illusions and the call to reality. So Kanthi introduces nillness, but it's not just some abstract idea, is it? It's presented as a living path, a way to exist that lies, and I'm quoting here, beyond mere words and the creations of the mind. That's a fundamental challenge to how we usually navigate things.
Absolutely. And when we kind of zoom out to the bigger picture, he defines nillness as the absolute foundation. A foundation for a kind of perception that allows us to look at what he calls the ocean of humanity. Without the mind's constant internal chatter, its ups and downs, its rise and fall. What's really striking is this idea that it's a state where our accumulated stuff, identities, beliefs, memories, knowledge, experiences, they completely end. Not like forgetting them, but ceasing to identify with them, which the author argues leads to an end to all human suffering.
That's a huge claim. And the book paints a pretty stark picture of our current human condition, where all the divisions we experience out in the world and even within ourselves are largely created by the mind. And this leads to widespread suffering.
Right, which brings up a critical paradox, doesn't it? If the mind created the problems, how can the solution not come from the mind itself? Seems counterintuitive. But the author argues that our words, while obviously useful for communication, for recognition, they become a real barrier when we identify with them too strongly. They stop us from experiencing what he calls unfiltered reality.
It's a really thought-provoking point. Kanthi states it plainly. The problems that exist in the world were created by the mind. The solution cannot come out of it.
Yeah.
And he connects this to how, while people are unique inherently, our minds are just so quick to slap on labels like weird or toxic. And these labels are all based on our own principles, our own past experiences, often blinding us to who people really are.
That's fascinating. He uses this analogy like a filter placed in front of the eyes. Our mind's constant activity, that internal monologue, it acts as this filter, always distorting our view of reality, often leading to more disorder, more confusion. And this is especially true, he notes, when our minds are kind of accustomed to negative experiences, often driven by fear.
Yeah, and the book also challenges our everyday notions. Even something as basic as the idea of best. Kanthi just flat out asserts, there is no best in reality. He suggests our urge to compare everything is an addiction, something the mind uses to divide and categorize.
It's a really powerful insight, I think, into how society often bestifies everything, creates these hierarchies, which he argues creates an addiction to being told what to do. We just want the roadmap. And this ties right into what he calls the illusion of innovation, where even big advancements like artificial intelligence, machine learning, the author suggests they're fundamentally just reflections of our own mental processes. They exploit our fascination with novelty rather than leading to genuine, deep insight.
Wow. So if we follow that logic, it sounds like we're kind of being hoodwinked by our own mind, as he puts it, and maybe even subtly manipulated by the language used, say, in the corporate world. Language designed to guide the unfocused mind of the masses. That's quite a sobering perspective on our daily reality, isn't it?
It really is. Makes you reconsider a lot.
The individual and the universal.
So, given all these illusions he talks about, the book makes this really powerful plea for the world needs originality. But it's not about striving to be, the next Charles Darwin or Steve Jobs. That is not the point. It's more about rediscovering and expressing ourselves in our own pristine form. A form that arises naturally from a genuine curiosity of the unknown.
That's such a crucial point, because how do you cultivate that true originality when it's so easily lost? The author explains it's often because of the copying mechanism of the mind, we just imitate, and also the subtle influences of marketing, advertising, which he says have even corrupted our words. He really stresses that freeing ourselves means letting go of what others are doing, to allow our own unique expression, our own way to just emerge.
Yeah, and that struggle for authenticity, it definitely spills over into our digital lives. The book highlights the whole, share, obsess, the digital craze for validation, where our very deep psychological needs and needing recognition, belonging, seem to get turned into digital obsessions. Whether it's a like button or scrolling job portals or even using emoticons, they all mirror real-life needs, but in this virtual space. And the danger is a loss of touch with reality. The book then brings us right back to basics with this chapter title, You Are an Organism First. Such a potent reminder, isn't it? Our physical bodies are just this incredible collection of, 78 organs, and most of what our bodies do is completely beyond our conscious control.
Right, breathing, digesting.
Exactly. The surprising exception, he notes, our choice of food. What we eat, how many times, when, and how much. That's where we have some agency.
And what's really insightful there is how this fundamental understanding, just seeing ourselves as organisms, can lead to an incredible shift in perspective, a shift in how we approach health, how we connect with nature. Kanthi then expands this out to, you are humanity. He asserts that even though we're in separate physical bodies, the whole of humanity is one. We all share the same fundamental processes, right? Breathing, feeling, thinking, loving, failing. He says the separation is physically bodied individually, but the mechanisms that are there in all of us are essentially the same.
Interesting. So if we follow that line of thought, the deeper insight is what? That there is something beyond the body, beyond the mind, that unites all of humanity.
That seems to be the direction, yeah. A very universal concept.
So this deep dive, this whole process clarifies that the journey to awareness isn't just a small tweak. It marks a drastic shift in the way a person looks at life itself. And he presents it as a kind of transformation from which there's no way back. Once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah, and connecting this to the bigger picture, the book really emphasizes that we can't expect, all the problems to just vanish at once, or all the blocks eliminated at once. It's not like flipping a switch. He describes it as an ongoing, progressive work. This is particularly critical when you consider what he calls the vicious cycle, where unconscious parents might unwittingly pass on their own toxicity, their limitations to their kids, and these patterns get deeply engraved into the child's mental framework.
But there's hope, and I find this incredibly empowering. As an adult, Kanthi says, you now have the innate ability to choose what to let in and what not to from your past, even the stuff from your parents.
Right, the ability to sort it out.
Exactly. This work, he suggests, is about clearly distinguishing what is theirs and what is yours. And he boldly calls this the most important work of your adulthood. Practical wisdom for a conscious life. Okay, let's shift gears a bit to human relationships. The book poses this really cutting question. Why are you fighting with yourself? Revealing that often conflicts in our relationships are fundamentally rooted in our identification with the memories of one another. We're not actually seeing the person in front of us. We're seeing our accumulated idea of them, our past experiences.
That really challenges us, doesn't it? How do we break free from those ingrained patterns? Well, the author wisely emphasizes you cannot change any person because that's what they are. You can't force it. Instead, the advice is observe, look at your own patterns, turn the focus inward. He brilliantly likens the mind's compulsive way of interpreting others to an alcoholic hooked to the drinks. Always going back to those old beliefs, those old fears.
Yeah, that's a strong analogy. And this applies to unconditional love too, he says. The book stresses how rare, pure, unconditional love actually is, and the regret that often comes from taking it for granted when we do experience it. It urges us, look at them without memory. Try to drop the image we've built up over years. Kanthi suggests this mental image is often the root cause of all relationship problems. Unawareness, just not seeing clearly.
It's fascinating, too, how the source ties trauma directly to this unawareness, often stemming from childhood programming. And it even challenges our concept of boundaries, a concept we rely on so much. Kanthi argues they do not exist in reality, beyond being purely human constructs. They're just ideas we've created, agreements we've made, not some inherent truth of existence.
Wow. Okay. The book also powerfully reminds us that the choice one makes fundamentally defines the quality of our life. Our choices matter immensely. The only thing, it points out quite starkly, that we don't choose is the death of our body.
And connecting that to the bigger picture, the author suggests that psychologically, ending all their attachments moment to moment actually leads to the highest form of living. It becomes a state where you almost have no choice but to be aware of the reality in front of you.
Interesting.
This naturally links to his idea of find your flow. You know, that one thing you genuinely love doing when nobody's watching, where no effort feels involved.
That's a brilliant connection. And he specifically warns against choosing work based primarily on money. He sees that as something that limits the scope of how much one can grow, personally and professionally.
Limits potential.
Exactly. The key, Kathy I says, is brutal honesty with yourself, really cutting through the noise, to remove distractions and align with your natural and innate skills, what you're actually good at and enjoy. The book also really champions the art of eliminating, getting rid of distractions, whether that's the digital clutter on our phones and computers, or the internal repetitiveness of the mind itself, that constant looping.
Right, which prompts the key question. How exactly do you take back charge of the mind? It sounds good, but how? The author suggests observing the mind's old patterns, becoming aware of them first, and then consciously turning the content on its head. So for instance, if your mind is stuck repeating negative self-talk, you actively challenge it, question it, don't just accept it. This practice, he says, is crucial for long-term gratification, because the compulsive mind always seeks what's easy, what's immediate.
Yeah, the quick hit.
But reality, as Kanthi sees it, operates on a different timescale. It aligns with timelessness, which naturally paves the way for more profound long-term approaches.
And here's where it gets really interesting, I think. The book reveals that the golden lighthouse is always there, always showing you what you need to work on.
Yeah.
How? By highlighting what you do not like in others.
The projection mechanism.
Exactly. What irritates you, what triggers you in someone else. Kanthi says this serves as a signal to light up the darkness within yourself and eliminate those deeply rooted patterns. It's a challenging mirror, for sure, but potentially very powerful.
Definitely challenging. Deep perception and the path to nillness.
Okay, our deep dive now takes us into some really interesting territory. Spiritual awakening through sound. Kanthi puts forward this idea that thinking at its core is a sound. That's a fascinating way to frame our internal world, isn't it?
It really is. And what's truly insightful here is the idea that all our senses, touch, hearing, sight, smell, taste, don't happen in isolation. He says they occur simultaneously. It's one unified field of experience. And the author suggests consciously engaging with the soundscape around us, using that as a means to go beyond the individual experiences, to start perceiving the wholeness of life, the oneness of existence.
That makes so much sense when you think about it. The book proposes that the external noise we often dislike, the city sounds, the traffic, the chatter, it often just mirrors the noise in the mind.
The internal static.
Right. And once there's a sense of unity with existence, Kanthi says, the noise is never a problem. It just is. This profound insight allows sound and silence to be seen not as opposites or not separate happenings, but maybe as two sides of the same coin, just different aspects of awareness. Then there's the art of looking, which is presented as something totally distinct from thinking. It's about simply seeing what's there without the mind's usual filters jumping in, without the images created from the bundle of memories constantly overlaying our direct perception.
So how do we cultivate that? How do we practice this art of looking? The author clarifies that your awareness are the one who gives birth to every single thought. And that simply becoming aware of such thoughts, noticing them without judgment, actually ends the stream of unconscious thinking. It breaks the spell. This path, he argues, leads toward enlightenment, the overlooked simplicity. It suggests enlightenment doesn't necessarily come from grand, mystical fireworks experiences, but maybe from quiet, persistent contemplation of simplicity, just looking closely at the ordinary.
And this is where the concept gets really deep, I think. Kanthi emphasizes that in this deep observation, the observer, the observee, and the act of observing become one.
The separation dissolves.
Exactly. It's like being so utterly immersed in a moment, watching a sunset, really listening to music, feeling the breeze that your sense of a separate self just dissolves into the experience itself. He calls it finding the ultimate pixel of existence, where time itself seems irrelevant. Which brings us, fittingly, to this profound idea of returning to the source, the root of all yearnings. He suggests that all our deep desires for more money, more love, more happiness, whatever it is, are fundamentally at their root a call to realize the true nature of existence, a homing signal.
Yeah, expanding on that, the author explains that this source itself does not exist, not as a thing or a place, which is why he uses the word nillness for it. It's something that can be realized and lived with effortlessly, he claims. Not something you find out there. It's about recognizing that the mind of humanity is actually one unified consciousness shaped by everyone who ever lived, and that all that is in you right now, this second, traces back all the way back to the very first time the existence came into being. That's a mind-bending idea.
It really is. And this leads to what feels like the ultimate realization in the book, in The Art of Being, the idea that what is looking at the creation is the creator itself. The awareness looking through your eyes is the source. And the most profound takeaway Kanthi leaves us with is this final quote. At the end of a thought, there is death. When you see this deeply, you will have no more questions about life or death or spirituality or life or anything for that matter. Outro. So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the art of nillness, it seems pretty clear that the kind of transformation Kanthi is talking about isn't about external fixes, right? It's not about accumulating more knowledge or changing circumstances, but a really profound inner shift. The author tells us himself that the art of nillness is not only the last chapter, but is a part of all that is written and a way of being. It permeates the whole book.
Yeah, and it invites us to consider that no matter what our current life circumstances are, the friction, the difficulty, our suffering can actually be the foundation from which we seek the deepest truth of life. The challenges we face, they become these opportunities for growth. They push us to question everything, including our very existence and maybe most fundamentally, who is truly looking through these mortal eyes.
Absolutely. And just to leave you, the listener, with a thought to maybe mull over, Anil Kanthi ends the book by suggesting that the answer to life is pretty simple. It is not as complicated as the mind projects it to be. What if that simplicity isn't hidden away somewhere? What if it's actually staring back at us in every single moment, just waiting for us to, purely observe without adding anything? What if the art of nillness is simply the art of seeing what is already truly there?